Excuse me! Taxi!
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Eric Swalwell is crashing and burning in his desperate attempt to become governor of California, former congressman, or he is a present congressman, currently serving. He's got the small issue of not being from the state he represents. Okay, he doesn't live there, and it looks like it's illegal for him to become the governor. This has all come to light because of our friend Joel Gilbert, the great investigative journalist, filmmaker, author. Check him out at the Gateway Pundit and beyond. Groundbreaking work. You have exposed this man, and you've got even more. Joel Gilbert, welcome back.
Okay, good to be here, Greg, and I have some breaking news for you today.
Please.
All right, here's what's going on. Today, the judge just gave a preliminary opinion for my case on Monday morning at 9 a.m. in Sacramento Court to disqualify Swalwell. So it's actually a three-step process. First, she gives a preliminary ruling based on reading all the submitted documents, and she's done that. I'm going to tell you what she said. And then at 9 a.m. on Monday, the losing party from the preliminary makes a 20-minute argument to convince the judge to change her ruling. And then whoever loses, whether me or Swalwell, are going to appeal it to the 3rd District Court in California. The certification is on Thursday, the 26th. So we got 3 days for an emergency appeal. So it's really a three-step process. Now, the breaking news is today, the judge has just in the last 10 minutes released her preliminary ruling. And in this ruling, she focuses on something called Election Code 2026. Where she says that Swalwell's former campaign worker, this lady named Christine Mazurka, submitted a statement to the court, and she said, I've rented out my house to Swalwell since 2017, and he rents from me. That's it. She gives a statement. She rents the whole property. Now, turns out, New York Post went out there, it turns out she lives there with her husband, child, and German Shepherd. I also looked at the homestead exemption for Alameda County. It turns out that she takes a homestead exemption every year for $7,000, which requires her to live in the property. So I submitted that to the court as well, that I don't think this woman's statement that she rented her house to him is true because she produced no lease, no nothing. And I showed actual government documents that prove that she lived there. Anyway, the judge uses this Election Code 2026 and says, there's a statement saying that he lives in this property, and I don't have to prove he lives there, so she denied my petition in the preliminary ruling. Now, I can go on Monday, and I will, and argue that she's wrong, because the Election Code actually says that they didn't offer any evidence. All they had is a statement that she rented her house to Swalwell, and I provided actual government documentation that that's not true. So I'm going to make my argument on Monday to hopefully convince the judge to go ahead and issue my writ. If unsuccessful, I will go to the appeals court immediately on Monday, and the appeals court is different. They actually take these things much more seriously. They don't misinterpret codes. So it's a three-step process. Process number one, today the judge ruled against me, but I have a chance to overturn it Monday, and then I have a chance to get the appeals court to agree that Swalwell does not have a residence in California. He does not meet the threshold to become governor of California.
Couple of things. Number one, would you please text me her ruling? It's public. You have it, right, what she wrote?
Yeah, I'll text it to you right now.
Thank you. And with that in mind, she says she cites the homeowner saying, well, he's been renting from me for the past, 17 years, 7 years? How long?
About 7 years.
7 years.
She's the sister-in-law of a former campaign worker, and she lives there with her kid, her husband, and her dog in a 1,300-square-foot crappy old house.
I got it. So she cites that statement. Is there anything in the code, and you mentioned this, but I didn't catch it entirely, does Swalwell have to prove that he lives there under these circumstances? It sounds to me like she just took the statement. Is she legally allowed to just take that statement? Do you just need someone to say something? That can't be.
Well, you see, here's the thing. I'm going to argue on Monday in court that she does not need to determine whether or not he lives there or not, okay? All she has to do is look at the evidence, whether or not he lives there. Now, They provided no evidence at all that he lives there. She's got a woman saying, oh, I rented my house to him, the entire property. Now, Swalwell had a campaign worker made a statement last week after New York Post went out there, and the campaign worker said, oh, he rents a room from her, making it even more ridiculous. But I provided actual government documentation that she lives there. So her job as a judge is to look at the evidence. And rather than looking at evidence, she said, well, I'm going to rely on this statement. No lease was provided, no terms of lease, no receipts, nothing.
And she says that explicitly, I'm relying on this statement?
Correct. Now, Swalwell, this thing started 2 months ago. If Swalwell really lived somewhere, he would have put out a lease, a copy of a lease, and showed some checks, checks where he had put it in the bank, and, hey, I'm paying rent here for 7 years. He never did that. So it's bogus, it's nonsense. A lot of judges, as we know from President Trump, he went to 60 courts to show that the election was rigged in 2020. Every single court, they don't want to get involved in election issues, so they look for some excuse because they don't want to say anything about elections. So the Democrats have been running around for 5 years saying Trump had 60 court cases, that was rejected by 60 courts. Well, every court found some technicality to avoid having to hear the case. And it's not over. I have a chance to change her mind. I've got a great argument. I just sent you on text.
Yeah, I do. And I see already she's biased against you. The petitioner is you, correct?
I'm the petitioner, and I sent you my argument.
But no, I see Monday. That. But she's like, petitioner is admonished that many of his submittings do not comply with California rules of court. Rule 2.111 regarding the format of the first page of each separate filing. I mean, this is the crap that she's focusing on. In other words, well, she's trying to undermine you in the paperwork and highlight, you're doing this yourself. You don't have a lawyer doing it, correct?
Right. Yeah, I don't have a lawyer, but I think
good for you, by the way, because lawyers are crazy expensive. And then she has petitioner is further admonished for repeatedly filing documents in a piecemeal response to the opposition briefs rather than filing a single reply. Okay, give me a break, lady.
Look,
right?
Here's the thing. Here's the court. The courts and the judge are like, hey, man, we went to law school, and we have student debt of $180,000. Who the hell are you thinking you can submit something to the court without all that we went through? That's kind of their attitude.
Yeah.
So, look, I submitted very professional filings. Anyone can go to swalwellisdisqualified.com. You can read my petition. I constantly get complimented. I've even been accused by attorneys, jokingly. They say, hey, you're practicing law without a license. You did a great job. So the case is very straightforward. That's why I didn't need a lawyer. Swalwell told his bank in sworn documents in D.C. that was his principal residence in Washington. He maintained no residence in California whatsoever. California Constitution requires a 5-year residency to run for governor before the election. It's so straightforward. So Swalwell, at the last second, like a week ago, he had his former campaign worker's sister-in-law send a statement to the court saying, oh, I rented my house to him. No lease, no terms, nothing. Just a statement. The New York Post goes out there.
All right, hold on one second. All right, because you mentioned that before.
Yeah.
The domicile of a member of the legislature or representative, this is Election Code 2026, provides for the presumption as the domicile of a member of Congress. The domicile of a member of the legislature or representative in the Congress of the United States shall be conclusively presumed to be at the resident address indicated on that person's currently filed affidavit of registration, as long as the address is a residence under subdivision of Section 349, notwithstanding that the member or representative may have another residence at which any of the following may apply. All right, so she seems to be saying it's presumed. You have to almost give him the benefit of the doubt. Is that
no? This is why I'm going to win on appeal, because she has an obligation to determine this based on reliable evidence. I provided reliable evidence from the property tax records of Alameda County showing that this woman takes a $7,000 homestead exemption every year, which by definition requires her to live on the property. Swalwell's campaign worker sent in a statement at the last second after several months saying, oh, I rented my property to him. Nonsense. Also, Tom Steyer's campaign actually did a good job. They looked at Swalwell's FEC filings, and they said every time that Swalwell went to Alameda County, he stayed in the Rose Hotel, a very fancy hotel in Alameda County.
And you pointed this out. You pointed this out to the judge.
Yes, I provided the judge with all of this.
And I understand you, and I understand that you're right. I'm more trying to figure out how the judge is, like, her reasoning here, and I think this is it. So she says, shall be conclusively presumed, and then she defines what conclusively presumed means. Presumption that cannot be overcome by any additional evidence or argument because it is accepted as irrefutable proof that establishes a fact beyond dispute, which is
nonsense. You've got two representations, and both cannot be true. You've got a representation, I rented my property to the Swalwells with no evidence whatsoever, no lease, no canceled checks, nothing. You've got my submission where I gave 7 years of tax records showing that she's required to live there based on her exemptions every year. So the judge was required to weigh the reliable evidence. Swalwell had no evidence. He spent 2 months calling me names on Twitter and then had this woman say that she rented to him. New York Post went out and interviewed the neighbors. They said, we've never seen Swalwell. His hotel bills show that he never even stayed there. So Swalwell is not a resident of California. I'm going to make a great argument on Monday, 9 a.m., and if I don't get through to the judge, I'm going to go to the appeals court, and I think I'll have a shot.